Welcome back, everybody. I am DJ Riley, one of the hosts from Boys on the Bench, and I am back with my top 5 NBA picks for these Friday matchups. Now, if you were following along yesterday, we did end up going 3-3 on our top bets with Amen Thompson, Kyle Lowry, and Fred VanVleet not hitting it at all. Fred was the hook. He had 12 rebounds plus assists when we needed him to have 13. And then Kyle Lowry surprisingly had 0 assists on the day. And then Amen Thompson just had an absolute day rebounding. So that was very frustrating in itself. But our pick of the day, which was OG Anunoby, ended up cashing this out very easily. We needed him to only have 19 rebounds, PRA, and he ended up going for 20 plus quite easily here. So anyways, though, I am back with my top 5 NBA picks for today. But before we jump into this, check the description below because down there you will hear me reference Daily Grind Fantasy several times throughout this video, and it is just a positive EV betting tool giving you the best percentage odds to hit. And if you're new to this channel, we're looking for that 54% plays, and they are constantly producing these 54% plays. It's kind of that magic number for you when you're looking at positive EV. So make sure you're checking that out because, like I said, I will be referencing that quite a bit today. Also in the description, though, you will find our X profile down there as well, where all of these picks are posted 100% free. So make sure you're giving that a look as well. Anyways, with that said, let's go ahead and jump into our picks for today. And as always, I will start with the pick of the day, which is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope going over 10.5 points plus rebounds. Does have a one-game history versus a San Antonio Spurs team on November 26th, where we saw him go for 17 points plus rebounds on 31 minutes of play. Now, if we look at what Daily Grind Fantasy is giving us, it's a 53.4% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 135. So again, we're looking for that 54%, but that 53.4 is coming in pretty close, giving us pretty decent odds in terms of positive EV. Now, if we look at recent performances, he's hit this line in 3 out of his last 5, but then also 7 out of his last 10. So he's hitting this number at quite a high rate here recently, and it looks to be kind of trending that way again today because the Spurs are a pretty bad defensive team, ranking bottom 5 in both points and rebounds allowed in all of the NBA. They also are allowing teams to shoot 38% from deep, which is the 5th highest in the NBA. And if you know KCP's game, he's currently shooting the ball quite a bit from deep with 4.5 3-point attempts per game over his last 10. Now, Pope isn't necessarily a good rebounder. However, he does face a team that allows the second most rebounds, which opens up the possibility of him getting decent numbers today, really only needing to knock about 2 to 3 3-pointers that he's shooting. So I really like this play for him today. San Antonio Spurs versus that shooting guard position, points plus rebounds, they allow the 3rd most. So really love this position here for KCP today to go over 10.5 points plus rebounds. But let's move on to the next pick that I have for you, and that is James Harden going over 12.5 rebounds plus assists. He has a 3-game history versus this New Orleans Pelicans team, where his most recent matchup was on February 7th, where he had 13 rebounds plus assists on 38 minutes of play. And his other 2 games, he had 16 and 15 on 29 and 37 minutes of play, meaning that he's hit this in every single matchup versus this New Orleans Pelicans team. Now, if we look at what Daily Grind Fantasy is giving us, it's a 53.2% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 134. So another play here where books are heavily favoring this over here for James Harden. Recent performances, however, he's only hit this in 2 out of his last 5 and 5 out of his last 10. So he's not necessarily hitting this at a high rate. But if we also look at it his last 10, he's had 4 hooks over that time, so he's been very close to hitting this in 9 out of his last 10 games. Now, Harden has dominated the Pelicans all season long, as I mentioned, where he's hit this line in all 3 of those games, but he even faces this team tonight, which currently allows the 11th most assists in all of the NBA, which will likely dominate again today. Harden's had at least 8 plus assists in 8 out of his last 10 games. And in the 3 games that he's played against the Pelicans this season, he's managed double-digit assists in 2 of those 3 games. Now, his rebounds will definitely be the toughest thing to come by for him, but he can manage at least 3 rebounds. Then he's hit this line in 75% of the games this season, which was 38 out of 51 possible games. So I expect him to have high assist numbers, not necessarily needing him to have high rebounding numbers, but if he can at least manage 3, we have a very good shot at hitting this today. New Orleans Pelicans versus the shooting guard position, rebounds plus assists, they allow quite a bit. They allow the 7th most in all of the NBA to that shooting guard position. So definitely love James Harden to go for 13 rebounds plus assists today versus this Pelicans team. But let's move on to my next pick that I have for you, and that is staying in the same game, but the opposite side of the ball, and that's Zion Williamson going over 11.5 rebounds plus assists. Again, 3-game history versus his Clippers team, where his most recent one was on that February 7th matchup, where he had 13 rebounds plus assists on 35 minutes of play, and then his previous 2 games was 7 rebounds plus assist, and then 11 rebounds plus assist. Now, in his second matchup this season, he didn't even play 20 minutes. He only played 19 minutes and still ended up with 7 rebounds plus assists. And then his other one was a hook with that 11 rebounds plus assists. Now, if we look at what Daily Grind Fantasy is giving us, it's another 53% play with an average juice of minus 133. Recent performances, he's hit this in 3 out of his last 5, and then also 6 out of his last 10. So he's been kind of sporadic here recently, but the Clippers are a good rebounding team. But where I really like Zion in this matchup is that the Clippers are a bad offensive rebounding team. They can't stop opposing teams from getting offensive rebounds against them. They currently allow the 7th most offensive rebounds in all of the NBA. And in the 3 matchup that Zion has played them in this season, he averages 2 offensive rebounds. Now, Zion has hit this line in 7 out of his last 10 games where he's had at least 2 offensive rebounds, which means that he's likely to do that again today. He's also improved here as a passer here recently, averaging 6+ assists over his last 10 and his last 15 games, which is very important because if we look at this line, if we look at games that he's hit at least 6+ assists, he's hit this line 100% of the time, and his line is currently set at 5.5 assists, and it's heavily favoring that over as well for him to go for over 5.5 assists, meaning that he's likely to have 6 assists in this game. So really like him to go for over 11.5 rebounds plus assist here. Now that brings us to our next pick, and that is Keyonte George going over 18.5 points. He does have a 1-game history versus this Atlanta Hawks team, and in that matchup on February 27th, he had 14 points on 33 minutes of play. So he definitely just fell shy of this by a couple shots here. Now, if we look at what Daily Grind Fantasy is giving us, though, it's a 52.7% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 131. Recent performances, he's been balling out, hitting 4 out of his last 5 and 5 out of his last 10. So he's been definitely dominating here over this past week. And really, if you look at his last 5, he's basically hit 4 straight because the one game that he missed this past week, he had limited playing time because of an injury where we only saw him play 6 minutes. And over that span, though, we can see that he's been shooting 14+ field goal attempts over his last 10, 17+ in 3 straight games. And I really expect similar numbers today versus a high-paced Atlanta Hawks team and a defense that allows the 3rd most points and the 6th most points to the shooting guard position. So Keyonte George comes into a highly favorable spot where he's been shooting the ball like crazy recently, but then has a high-paced team in the Atlanta Hawks defense. So anyways, love for him to have 19 points today. I even have him going over 20 points today, so really love this play for Keyonte George. But let's move on to the last pick that I have for you, and that is Victor Wembanyama going over 10.5 rebounds. Has a 1-game history versus this Denver Nuggets team on November 26th, where we saw him have 11 rebounds on only 25 minutes of play. That was during that span where he had a minute restriction and was not allowed to play over 25 minutes. Daily Grind Fantasy is also giving this a 52.9% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 131. Now, if we look at recent performances, he's also been dominating here over the last week, hitting 4 out of his last 5 and 6 out of his last 10, with 4 of those misses, 3 of them being hooks. So again, very close to hitting this in 9 out of his last 10 games. Denver is a top rebounding team, but does struggle versus the taller power forward and centers with like Walker Kessler and Kristaps Porzingis, who had no issue clearing their rebounding lines by 3+ in these recent matchups versus this Denver Nuggets team. Wembanyama was also able to clear this, like I said, in limited playing time on only that 25 minutes of play in their last matchup, but now he's seeing 30+ on a nightly basis. Now, Denver versus the power forward position, they do allow the 4th least rebounds, but again, they struggle versus these taller framed power forward / center positions. So definitely love Victor Wembanyama going over 10.5 rebounds here today. So anyways, guys, these are my top 5 NBA picks. Hopefully we can get everything back on track. Just got back into the States the other day, so hopefully we can start this back off with a win. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below, which ones you're tailing, which ones you're fading. As always, make sure you're subscribing to this channel, hitting that notification bell, and getting notified anytime these videos are dropping because they are coming out daily. Thank y'all so much. Let's have a good day, and I will see y'all tomorrow.